I think the numbers the average end user is looking at is, does this have more megapixels? Does this have more Ps? Does this have more Ps? Does this have more gigabytes? Those are the numbers the average end user is looking at. What I keep waiting for is for the little thing in the store for the smartphones, even though this is largely irrelevant, especially with the way that the operating systems optimize stuff differently. Pound per pound, I'd say Android versus iOS, it's the closest thing you're going to get to a pound per pound comparison. But I keep waiting for them to say, this processor is this much, and this much, and this one has this much memory, and this one has this much memory, and this one has this much storage, and this one has, for lack of a better word, like you compare computers. Because that is something Grandma does in the store, even if she has no understanding why. Grandma will go, well, this machine with the 133 megahertz RAM has 4 gig, and this one over here with the 800 megahertz has 2 gig. So the 4 gig is better. She doesn't understand the difference between the megahertz, which, now is becoming largely irrelevant as we remove front-side buses more and more. And I realize those are really old stats to be comparing, but that was a thing computer stores did for a good while there. Like they would put they'd put a large amount of the ridiculously cheap, outdated RAM in. I refused to buy computers in a store for a while until they would actually tell me like what frequency was in there, because they wouldn't let you boot into the BIOS in the store, and a lot of times Windows wouldn't give you an accurate reading on that, so you didn't really know what they'd stuck in there.
Maybe it's not as popular as the old megapixel thing, but it is there. I mean, I've been inside Fry's, and there they are. They're selling some Android phones, and it says right there on the list of things it has, the megapixels, and it says how many apps the Android market has.
Which is outdated before that was put on the shelf, as I'm sure was the iOS estimate. But yeah, I know what you mean.
But I mean, it does list that among the things, so people are looking at that and looking for the bigger number. It may not be as big of a deal to many people as a megapixel thing, but it's there, and it matters, and it also, just like the megapixel, doesn't matter as much as people think.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, this is one of the few things Apple said recently I agree with. The whole megapixel thing is completely irrelevant. I care a lot more about the actual, here's the things I care about when it comes to a camera. I care about its white balance capabilities, I care about its pixel capture, and I care about the overall contrast quality it can do in real time, especially in low light settings. Which the megapixel number, unfortunately, because of the overall distortion that's happened of that, means jack squat anymore. And it's like a 2 megapixel camera can be infinitely better than an 8 megapixel camera. It just depends on all those other factors. The megapixel doesn't tell me any of this. And
helps.
Say what?
Also, frame rate. A lot of cameras on phones don't have very good frame rate.
No. And I don't expect them to. It's until I see, given the things these phones are doing, until they start putting the dual-core chips in them, which is supposedly going to happen sometime late next year, I don't expect that to improve. I'm sorry. It doesn't have enough processing power to be a phone and do that in good quality. That will change, but it isn't there.
Well, here's a question of mine. What's going to happen to the camera market and, the portable gaming market when your phone is pretty much for the average user? I mean, I think I heard that once you get to like 7 megapixels, once you go above that, it doesn't really matter. People can't tell the difference. And phones are getting there.
It depends what you're doing. For a photography buff or somebody doing this as a professional, they're going to always need a professional camera. But, you know, that's a niche market anyways. They're not buying the average consumer thing usually. They're buying things like your Canon Rebels and your other stuff, which are specifically built for them.
But you know, the $100 camera markets, the $200 camera markets are really going to take a hit because this, you know,
they're going to be absorbed into the phone market, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It just means those companies will need to focus on other stuff.
Right, but I mean, I'm just seeing like how far is this going to go? You're going to have these devices, which I mean, eventually are going to run on, you know, 2 gigahertz processor, you know, next year, 4, and they're going to be as good of a camera that anyone except for professionals could ask for. They're going to be great gaming devices. They're going to have capabilities of great graphics. It's going to be able to do all these things pretty much any portable device you can think of will do, and it'll call people. So the only thing left is kind of like laptops and computers and tablets, and you know, I don't know what might happen to them. You know,
I don't see laptops going away because the point at which I see laptops going away is when these all-in-one smartphone devices begin to incorporate the Sixth Sense technology. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, please stop this video, open Google or whatever search you want, and type Sixth Sense technology. There's plenty of videos on it, yada yada and so forth. But when that stuff starts to get incorporated in there is when I see the laptop form factor beginning to get phased out of. Because when those devices get to 2 to 3 gigahertz and they incorporate that technology, then you no longer need the laptop. Until they get to that point, the laptop is your mobile computer. This device is your link. You can do a lot of things with it, but it's still, at the end of the day, not a full-blown computer.
Right, but how long until, you know, I'm thinking, how long until you're going to just have a monitor at home instead of just a desktop computer, and you're going to bring your phone over?
No. When they start incorporating that Sixth Sense stuff, you won't have a monitor at all. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't, actually.
Okay, basically the Sixth Sense stuff is the UI. You know, some people have argued, well, the GUI is obsolete. And they're right, it is. But it's the way you do things when you have a monitor and keyboard and mouse. The whole idea behind Sixth Sense stuff is if I want to take a picture, I hold up my hands and I form a frame, and it goes picture. If I want to mess with the stuff on the screen, I don't have a screen. I walk up to a wall, I project to it, I grab this, I move it here, I move that there, I do this. It's an actual virtual physical thing.
It augments reality.
Augmented reality, basically. And the next logical step I see for Sixth Sense is, right now, the way that all of that stuff's being done is it basically projects a hologram. I would love to see the Sixth Sense technology get combined with another technology most people don't know about, which is, it turns out our brains are not pre-wired. There's this kook who's doing experiments where he puts a chip that has a neural interface. And one of the experiments he did was he blindfolded people and he put sonar, basically radar on them. And it turned out the brain was able to perfectly interpret this without any training whatsoever. Which means if you calibrated it properly through a neural interface, basically schizophrenia would become commonplace. People, 20 years ago, people walking down the street talking to nothing, we thought they were possessed. Now we just think they're on a Bluetooth cell phone. What it'll come to is somebody will be looking at their wrist. There'll be nothing there, but you're like, oh, they're looking at their Neuralink watch. Because the way the Sixth Sense stuff works right now is to put my finger on my wrist and I draw a circle and a watch projects there. And I see what time it is. The way the neural interface equivalent to that would be, I think, oh, what time it is, and hold up my watch. And the algorithm through the calibration knows, oh, I want to see a clock. But I'd see it through I'd see it. My brain would see it. There'd actually be nothing there to see. I'd love to see that technology. And the reality is, aside from the fact it costs an arm and a leg, the technology to do it's here today. It's not science fiction. It's just too damn expensive.
Yeah, the singularity is coming soon.
So, but yeah, this stuff will start to phase out. But this goes back to the thing people are saying. Oh, the computer's obsolete. It's all about the phone now. But what it is we're in the middle of the form factors that are important changing. It's at the end of the day where I see laptops going is somebody who wants the tactile response. You don't need a pen and paper to draw anything today. You don't. I know, and you don't need. It's like there are a lot of artists who are willing to pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 or more for sketch pads that have full tactile feedback. To an artist, that's important. To a 5-year-old doing a class project, that is completely irrelevant unless they have real artistic roots. And that's the thing that's going to be changing in what form factors we're doing. On the one hand, I see that making a lot of this stuff more accessible. There's a lot of things that the average end user doesn't do right now because it requires them to get 3 or 4 form factors. If they can do it all through form factor X, even if they can't do it as well, they'll start to do it. And that's where these phones and stuff are going to go.
Yeah. All that stuff is going to cause a pretty big change in, how humanity and humans work too.
Oh, I'm still waiting for people. You know what? Anybody. I hate to say it, but the thing that'll drive that change most will be when people start making games that work on that technology. I'm sorry. It will. Somebody makes it takes what is it? I think it's called There now, like the virtual world thing that. I forget what it became. What is it? World 2 or whatever. There's like some virtual world thing where people interact and do other stuff in a virtual world.
Second Life?
Second Life, that's it. It was there when it was in beta. It's Second Life now. Thank you. That's what'll drive adoption of that technology. When something like Second Life goes, oh, by the way, we now have this whole we've taken Google Earth and we've overlapped it with Second Life. So now, as you're walking around in the actual world, you can experience Second Life in real time. It's like even though it's pointless, it's like, oh, and if you don't like your current location, you can just change it. You can virtually travel. And then that technology will start to get adopted. It's going to take some kind of a platform like that, because until then, nobody's going to really do anything with it or see the potential of it. So, I don't know. Let's see. I gotta. But no, like you're saying, it's even if they box it up, it's only a matter of time before Android overtakes iOS. I'm sorry. iOS would have to change a lot of things if it wants to stay the predominant OS, and I just don't see Apple changing those things. So, for better or worse, at this point, Android is the Windows of the mobile platform.
Yeah.
I still can't decide if that's a good or a bad thing. It's just one of those things only an idiot would deny that it is.